In all of human history, art has mirrored life in the community, society, and the world in all its colors, lines, shapes, and forms. The same has been true in the last 2 centuries, with world events and global trends being reflected in the art movements. The decades from 1900 to the present have seen the human race living in an ever-shrinking planet. The 20th century saw a boom in the interchange of ideas, beliefs, values, and lifestyles that continues to bring the citizens of the world closer together. From the Industrial Revolution of the late 1800s, the world zoomed into the electronic age in the mid-1900s, then into the present cyberspace age. In just over 100 years, humans went from hand-cracked telephones to hands-free mobile phones, from the first automobiles to interplanetary space vehicles, from local radio broadcasting to international news coverage via satellite, from vaccinations against polio and smallpox to laser surgery. Social, political, and environmental changes. There has been migration across the globe, allowing different cultures, languages, skills, and even physical characteristics of different races to intermingle like never before. The 20th century also suffered through 2 world wars and several regional wars in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. There was the Great Depression of the 1930s and the Asian economic crisis of the 1990s. Consider the modern-day plague. AIDS has afflicted millions the world over, while millions more continue to live in hunger, disease, and poverty. Environmental destruction has also become a major concern. Effects on the world of art. The art movements of the late 19th century to the 20th century captured and expressed all these and more. Specifically, these were the movements known as Impressionism and Expressionism, while earlier period of art had a quite set conventions as to style, technique, and treatment of their subjects. Impressionists and Expressionists convey their ideas and feeling in bold, innovative ways. These were the exciting precursors of the modern art of the 21st century. Impressionism. Origins of the movement. Impressionism was an art movement that emerged in the second half of the 19th century among a group of Paris-based artists. The duration of the Impressionist movement itself was quite short, less than 20 years, from 1872 to the mid-1880s. But it had a tremendous impact and influence on the painting styles that followed, such as Neo-Impressionism, Post-Impressionism, Fauvism, and Cubism, and even the artistic style and movements of today. The name Impressionism was coined from the title of a work by French painter Claude Monet, Impression, Soleil Levant, in English, Impression, Sunrise. The term precisely captured what this group of artists sought to represent in their works. The viewer's momentary impression of an image. It was not intended to be clear or precise, but more like a fleeting fragment of reality caught on canvas, sometimes in mid-motion, at other times awkwardly positioned, just as it would be in real life. Impressionism owed its inspiration to earlier masters. Was greatly admired and emulated by the early Impressionists, specifically for his use of expressive brushstrokes, his emphasis on movement rather than on clarity of form, and most of all, his study in the optical effects of color. The Bark of Dante contained a then revolutionary technique that would profoundly influence the coming Impressionist movement, and it involves something as simple as droplets of water. The painting is loosely based on a fictional scene from Dante's Inferno, showing Dante and the poet Virgil crossing Hell's river Styx, while tormented souls struggle to climb aboard their boat. It is the drops of water running down the bodies of these doomed souls that are painted in a manner almost never used. When studied closely, it is seen that 4 different and mixed pigments, yellow, green, red, and white, create the image of each drop and its shadow. Viewed from a little distance, these colors blend to represent individual drops glistering with light. The distinct colors merge in the eye of the viewer to appear monochromatic or single-colored. In this case of water droplets, colorless. In short, an impression is formed. Putting these and similar principles into wider practice, future painters would carry French art into one of its richest periods, Impressionism. Impressionism, a break from past painting traditions. There were several areas in which Impressionist artists moved away from the established practices of art at that time. This involved their use of color, choice of subject matter and setting, and technique for capturing light and conveying movement. Color and light. The painting conventions and techniques of earlier art periods were very much concerned with line, form, and composition. In contrast, the Impressionists painted with free brush colors that conveyed more of a visual effect than a detailed rendering of the subject. They used short, broken strokes that were intentionally made visible to the viewer. They also often placed pure and mixed colors side by side rather than blended smoothly or shaded. The result was a feeling of energy and intensity as the colors appeared to shift and move again, just as they do in reality. Everyday subjects. Impressionists also began to break away from the creation of formally posed portraits and grandiose depictions of mythical, literary, historical, or religious subjects. They ventured into capturing scenes of life around them, household objects, landscapes and seascapes, houses, cafes, and buildings. They presented ordinary people seemingly caught off guard doing everyday tasks, at work or at leisure, or doing nothing at all. And they were not made to look beautiful or lifelike, as body parts could be distorted and facial features merely suggested by a few strokes of the brush. Painting outdoors. The location in which the Impressionists painted was also different. Previously, still lifes, portraits, and landscapes were usually painted inside a studio. However, the Impressionists found that they could best capture the ever-changing effects of light on color by painting outdoors in natural light. This gave their works a freshness and immediacy that was quite a change from the stiffer, heavier, more planned paintings of earlier masters. Open composition. Impressionist painting also moved away from the formal, structured approach to placing and positioning their subjects. They experimented with unusual visual angles, sizes of objects that appeared out of proportion, off-center placement, and empty spaces on the canvas. The influence of photography. Photography was in its early stages at this time as well. As it gained popularity, photography inspired Impressionists to capture fleeting moments of action, whether in landscape or in the day-to-day lives of people. But whereas camera snapshots provided objective, true-to-life images, the artists were able to offer a subjective view of their subjects, expressing their personal perception rather than creating exact representations. They also had the advantage of manipulating color, which photography at that time is still lack.